This video is sponsored by Skillshare. So this actually happened on one of my recent flights. All right, my aircraft just disconnected. My app just crashed. So it is right above me. Let's go and make sure. Now, as a drone flyer, this is definitely one of those things you do not want to see when you're out there flying, whether it be something like your remote control dying as far as the battery going down, the app crashing while you're in mid-flight, or the phone just fully shutting down because of battery loss. Now, of course, these are things that we don't want to see, but they are honestly very common within the field. So in this video, I do want to go through those 3 scenarios that you might encounter while you're out there. What happens when you're flying your drone and the remote control shuts off? What happens if you're mid-flight and the app crashes? And finally, what happens if you're mid-flight and your phone dies? So in this video, let's go through those 3 scenarios. But first, a quick word from our sponsor, Skillshare. And for those unfamiliar with Skillshare, Skillshare is an online learning community that's really focused around the creative arts. So if you're looking at getting into videography, photography, you want to tell a better story, Skillshare has thousands of classes to choose from. Now, when I first got into drones, I'm more on the photography side than the video side, but of course, since doing YouTube, I'm definitely doing a lot of videos. And when doing videos, it's extremely important to try to keep your audience engaged. So recently, I've been taking the classes from Thomas DeHare, who's actually one of the video editors for Yes Theory. In his course, he breaks down how to create engaging videos and also goes through a step-by-step process on how he scripts it out, how he shoots it, and also what he's looking for. So if you are looking at telling a better story and keeping your audience engaged, I highly recommend watching his class. And a huge thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. The first 1,000 people to use my link down below will get 30% off your annual premium membership. And now, back to the video. All right, so for the very first test, what I'm gonna do is see what happens if you're running low on your battery or your remote controller shuts off. Now, I do have a full battery on this remote control, so to simulate that, what I'm gonna do is take this up in the air and just power down the remote control. And for these tests, I'm gonna be using the DJI Mini 2 for all of them. Take off. All right, got the Mini 2 up in the air. What I'm gonna do is take it out a few hundred feet out and bring it up maybe about 50 to 75 feet up in the air. Don't wanna go too far and too far out there in case I have to go retrieve it in case something does go wrong. But let's bring it out there, and then what I'm gonna do is, of course, screen record, power everything down as far as the remote control, and let's see what happens. So first things first, let's get this thing out a little bit of ways. And of course, I want to keep everything somewhat line of sight so I am able to retrieve it, or if it drops, or if I have to pilot it back, I do want to be able to at least see it so I can get it back to me one way or another. All right, so for the very first test, let's shut the remote off. As you can see, everything is on right now. And what I'm gonna do is power this thing down and let's see what happens to the drone. All right, so right now on the screen, it does say RC not connected. And I can actually still see it right there. It has not moved just yet. Okay, looks like it's working its way back, or at least it is moving. Okay, so it does look like it's coming back right now. It does still say RC not connected. It's flying up right here. Now, the one thing I didn't talk about is the return to home, and we'll talk about that when I bring this back in. You're gonna wanna make sure that you set your return to home height a lot higher than anything around you. All right, so it is coming back down right now, and I actually stopped it right there. So because of the fact that my remote control is off, I'm not able to bring it all the way down. But the one thing you can do, and you normally don't want to do this all the time, but as long as you can get your drone into arm's length, you can actually do an emergency shutoff by just flipping it to the side. So in order for you to do this, you don't want to go right underneath it because the sensors will sense you and it'll raise it back up. You're going to want to come in from behind and quickly grab it and then turn it over about 180 degrees and it'll automatically shut the motors off. So you don't want to come underneath because the sensors will sense it and move back up. You want to come from behind, grab it, and then just turn it over just like that. And that way, if you don't have control with your remote, you can still at least get it back home and shut the motors off. And like I mentioned when it was out there, you do want to set that return to home height a little bit higher than anything around you. Luckily enough for me, there's pretty much nothing around me, but there's some electrical lines over here and a little small hill over here. But if I'm flying out that way, it's not gonna give me much of interference. But in case you want to set that, what you want to do is go into your settings, go into safety, and then it'll say right here, auto return to home altitude. Right now, because there's nothing around me, I'm going to set that altitude at about 100 feet, make it nice and easy. That way, if it ever goes into return to home, it'll then rise up to that height and then make its way back. So I'll just make it at, because I have nothing here, about 90 feet or so. All right, so for our next test, what we want to do is see what happens if the app crashes. Very common to have your app crash. You might have a lot of things open, or it's just not processing properly, and the app just shuts down. Now, one of the big things you do want to hear is that return to home or home point has been set. So when I did take off, it says home point has been set. That's going to be the big deal, especially if you wanted to go back to a specific location. So our home point was set. You heard it through the app. Let's get this thing back out there again. We'll just go to 500 feet away. What we want to do now is I'm recording, I'm screen recording. Let's force quit the app. Close it down. Go here and force quit the app. If you ever have the app crash, what you want to do is try to turn the app back on, and ideally you should be able to see what your drone sees when you restart the app. But in this case, what I'm going to do is fully quit it as though it crashed and we're not able to open it up, and let's see exactly what happens with the drone. So the drone is actually still sitting there because of the fact I still have connection with my remote control. As of right now, it's just sitting there hovering because we still have control with the remote. So what I want to do now is power the app back on and see if it's moved, if it's done anything that or changed since last time we flew it. So let's put this back on. Launching the DJI Fly app again. It's telling me I have a couple warnings. And there you go. So we have 55% battery, and it's just sitting there hovering in the air. So if you're worried about the app crashing, if it does crash, you should be fine as far as it just sitting there and hovering. And what you want to do is then restart the app if you're able to. If not, you ideally still have it line of sight. You should be able to fly it back home. But just let you know what happens if the app does crash, your drone will just sit there and hover until the battery warning kicks in, and then a return to home will kick in once the battery level gets a little bit too low. And just to test the return to home, even though we've already know it works, let's just hit that return to home icon either here on the app itself or on the remote control. Let's try the remote control, press and hold that.
Go home.
Okay, now it's going back into that return to home process. Now while the return to home is in progress, what I'm gonna do now is tap to cancel it and then just fly it back in myself. Just like that. Now as you can see that sensor come back up. If you try to grab it and too slow, the sensor is gonna sense you and then it'll kick back up. So if you want to hand land it, all you have to do is put your hand underneath it, hold down that left stick. It'll then go into landing mode, and then you can easily land it in your hand. So pretty simple. You don't need to grab it out of the air. You just have to hold it down, hold that stick down, and it'll go into landing mode while your hand is underneath, and it'll softly just fall right into your hand. And for the final scenario, what happens if you're mid-flight and your phone dies or shuts off? And the great thing about the Mini 2 controller, and this is the same with the Air 2, Air 2S with this controller, they did an update on it. So when you plug your phone in, now as far as my iOS device, I believe Android too, but for sure the iOS device, they did a little update on it. You now can charge your phone, or at least it keeps the phone charged enough, powered on, so you don't have to worry ideally about it shutting off mid-flight. We're already 500 feet out, 85 feet up in the air, 574 feet out as far as distance goes. Let's shut the phone down. Here we go. Press and hold. Let's shut the phone completely off. Right there. Power down. Now, I can still see the drone, so that's a good thing, because of the fact that if I have to fly it back, I can just now use my remote control to fly it back. But what I want to do is just wait a little bit, see if there's any return to home, if it kicks in at any time. I don't believe it will, because I still have connection with my RC, but it's just letting you know what happens here. And the great thing is here is that now that my phone is off and it's plugged into the remote control, it's actually turning back on, which is interesting because I didn't turn it back on, but I do see my Apple logo on here and it's actually turning the phone back on. So that's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if it was supposed to do that or not, but it did it and it's turning back on. Okay, and okay, we're back plugged in. It's still recording. It's a good thing. And there it is. We have not moved. So as you can see from when we left it off earlier, it was at 84 feet, still is at 84, 85 feet, 576 feet away. So even with the phone shut off, it just sits there and hovering in the air. As long as you don't have disconnect with your remote control, ideally your drone will just sit there and hover, giving you a chance to either get your phone back on, get your app restarted, and then fly home. All right, so now we do have the low battery warning. We're at 14, 15%. We have low battery, return to home. Aircraft will return to home. And right there, it automatically kicked in. And there it is. Just want to show you guys a few examples of what happens when you're out there flying, your remote control dies, your app crashes, or your phone dies. Just wanted to put it through some of the common scenarios you're gonna run into. Ideally, you don't wanna run into any of these, but it's gonna happen, it will happen. I think everyone has gone through it. But for a lot of new flyers out there that are curious of what happens, all of this is very similar on all the platforms as far as the DJI lineup goes. The Mini, Mini 1, Mini 2, the Air 2S, the Air 2. So these return to home functions are very similar on all of them. Just wanted to give you guys a little context of what happens if you're faced with one of these scenarios. Ideally, try not to panic. Turn the app back on if it crashes. Get your phone plugged in. With that new firmware update, your phone should be charging, or at least stay charged off of the battery that's in here. So make sure you guys do that remote control update. And that's about it for this video. Huge thanks to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Make sure you guys check out those Skillshare links down below if you want to save 30% off your annual premium membership. As always, if you guys got some value from this video, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell to be notified when I post new videos. If you guys want more videos on the Mini 2, make sure you guys check out my Mini 2 playlist down below. I also have a ton of videos on the Air 2S and all of the other DJI lineups. Make sure you guys check those links down below in the video description. Also, don't forget to follow my Instagram as well as my Twitter page. I post a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I'm doing on those social media platforms, so make sure you guys check those out. This is Ultra Anastacio with FlytPath.com. I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.